Morning, everybody, or afternoon, or evening, whenever you're watching this. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen Winkler. I'm a functional health and hormone coach, and I help women learn how to reverse insulin resistance and find a sustainable way of eating to keep that hormone balance. And today I am privileged to have Molly Rucker on with me. Molly is a nutritionist, self-hacker, and how do you say this word? Nutraceutical geek with over 20 years of experience in the supplemental wellness industry. I'm going to actually let her introduce herself even more because her and we got to know each other a couple years ago at a conference, and I asked her all the questions about brain health. And as I was trying to improve my epilepsy on my keto journey, when I met her and she was at a booth at a conference, I loved talking to her, and we have talked here and there in the DMs. So, Molly, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I had kind of a circuitous, however you say that, route into this industry. I was a fat kid, an obese teenager, then I was anorexic, hit 24, health was destroyed, and the question was, what is health? Skinny wasn't health, no carbs wasn't health, no fat wasn't health. I was lost and really looking for what is health because all of the extremes in the early 90s were not health. And that led me down a path that started with working at a health food store and then deep diving into, the neurochemistry and the biology of what a feeling is. You have a feeling, you feel X, Y, or Z physically, mentally, or emotionally, but what is that? Where does that live? And how do we make changes that are actionable on a daily basis that allow us to wake up and want to be in our life and have the motivation and the desire to be in our life? So, I almost 50 now, so it's been a lot of years since that 24-year-old with the broken health, and I've been through a lot, vegan, vegetarian, no fat, high fat, all of it. And all of that just instilled in me a really strong desire to understand at the base level what it is to feel good, because we have a lot of words about feeling good, but we don't know how to peel back the onion and get to that thing. So anyway, I, ended up becoming a clinical nutritionist, held a number of different jobs in the wellness and supplement industry, all along the way, just deep diving and being excited about the why. When someone says, well, this does this. Interesting. Tell me more. And then deep diving. So that has, led me into a space that I feel incredibly grateful to be a part of because I'm excited about things that lead me to actionables that can make me and the people in my circle and our potential customers actually feel better and hopefully help. I want other people to get excited about understanding the what and the how behind the feeling so that they have tools in their box as an individual throughout life to feel good while we're here, whatever this here is. And many jobs throughout the way, but now I'm in a space where it's educating and formulating protocols to help people feel better.
Love that. As a health coach, a lot of times clients will come to me and just say, I just don't feel good. Like when you're talking about the feelings part, I just don't feel healthy. I don't feel, it's like, well, and we always need to target into that more. Well, what is feel good for you mean? What does feel healthy look like? It's the same concept with the lose weight. I want to be skinny. Well, why? Why do you want to be skinny? What is it about the skinny that makes you feel good? You know?
Those, early on, just even back when I was working in health food stores, the piece of that that really hit home for me was when people would come in and say, "Well, I'm depressed. What should I take?" And, at first I didn't know anything about anything. I knew 5-HTP, I knew
Yeah.
my neurotransmitters, I knew St. John's wort, but over time what I realized is that I needed a lot more information about the individual, about their recent past, their long-term history, because sometimes the word depression means low serotonin. Sometimes it means low dopamine. Sometimes it means low, GABA. But I need to understand more about, like, are you happy but you just have no motivation? Do you feel lonely? Did someone just die? Where are you at in your cycle? There's so many pieces of the puzzle that I realized I needed to understand with individuals before I could just send them off with a supplement and say this is going to help your depression. So I learned to send them off with links to websites to help them better understand what neurotransmitter they might be deficient in. And they would often be shocked because, one, they thought I was just there to sell them something, and I was like, "Listen, I can give you this, but I don't know if this is going to give you anxiety or it's going to brighten your world in a way that you've never known, because if you have anxiety and depression and I give you L-tyrosine or L-dopa and you're already high dopamine, you may have anxiety and be scared off forever from alternative protocols. If you are a high GABA and a high serotonin individual and I give you high dose L-theanine, you may cry. Like, I don't have enough information. So I'd send people off to do a little research so they could own a little bit of knowledge about themselves,
Mhm.
then come back. Then we would carefully choose which neurotransmitter to play with. And that to me was massively eye opening, even before layering on any genetic information or hormonal information or blood test information. And you said it. The language that we have is not sufficient for the experiences that we have. And a lot of people have never even stopped to it took me years to go, I felt great yesterday. Why the hell do I feel like today? And then learn to count where am I at in my cycle, right? Like,
Yep.
oh, okay. I'm okay. Just shut up, deal with it, you'll feel better. Or, okay, I know X, Y, and Z is low because I'm in this point in my cycle. Let's go to the cupboard and let's see what tool can we leverage to feel better until our hormones pop back to the happy place. So it's a whole thing for all of us.
I love that you said that. That's something I have talked a lot about with clients and people on social media is you really have to dial in where you are in your cycle. It makes a big difference. Between not just how you feel and brain health, but also your weight. Like there's certain parts you're naturally gonna retain more water. Like so you should always compare, like if you're gonna compare the scale, I don't like using the scale as a metric, but if you're gonna compare, you have to compare to the same part of your cycle last time.
You
It's
do, and it also helps, it helps you as the individual give yourself a break and a little bit of grace to go. It's really easy. I think we all know this, male, female, all ages, but some of us more than others. Like, it's so easy to spiral, right? You felt good the day before, the next day you're supposed to go to some event, you go to get dressed, you just feel like you think you look like all of this, and then if you let those neurotransmitters and the thoughts involved with those neurotransmitters start spiraling, it becomes your reality. And the amount of time it takes to get yourself back to baseline when you have let one brief moment of time, which was one brief period of neurochemical hormonal imbalance. Now, it might take a week to talk yourself back into remembering, no, I'm awesome. I work out. I do all the things. I'm okay. So if you can learn to catch it and go, oh, well, nothing's happened to make me feel that way. Like, that's odd. Well, it is odd. Something shifted in your neurochemistry or your hormonal balance or your state of hydration or X, Y, or Z. And if you can just go, oh yeah, there's no good reason for me to feel this way. So, all right, let's sit with that. Let's let that pass and let's see what tools are in our box to feel
I love
better.
Yeah, no, 100%. And something you said I wanted to touch upon. So you said there's certain supplements or tools in the toolbox that might raise dopamine or GABA or any of these other neurotransmitters, but if you're already high in dopa, then it
Yep.
might cause more issues. How does one know where their levels are at? Is there particular tests they do? or
Uh,
is it symptomatic?
it's tricky for me. I think part of it for me, part of it starts with understanding what each of these neurotransmitters does. And so you can understand what your base level of good is. So as a for instance, I figured out before doing genetic testing or anything else that I was high dopamine and high acetylcholine. So this is your motivation, think fast, go, do combo. So for myself, before I figured that out, whenever I wasn't feeling good and my cycle was a mess for many years before I fixed that, I went like a drug addict to the chemicals I already had a bunch of because that's what my brain thought it needed. So I would do tyrosine, I would do L-dopa, I would do a ton of raw cacao nibs, anything to make me feel better, and I would just feel more anxious, and I would just feel more like kind of like out of myself. And it wasn't until a book, it's called The Edge Effect, and I believe the author is Dr. Braverman, and he has a neurotransmitter test in his book. He does I believe in practice he does neurotransmitter testing, but this book in The Edge Effect, it's a series of go fast true false questions. Don't overthink them, that helps you understand when you're feeling your best, what are the neurotransmitters that dominate you? Because we're not all the same. Like the ladies that always want all the ladies to come together because it feels so good to have all the girlfriends in the room and they want to do gatherings all the time. This is a serotonin dominant individual. I'm not serotonin dominant. I can hug a dog and I've got my dose. I'm good. But it's important to kind of understand where you start. And if you aren't familiar with what serotonin is, does, and feels like, what GABA is, does, and feels like, I love that basic test in that book. And I think you can just go online and look for the edge effect test and it'll just take you through. But as far as feelies, if you're feeling at a very basic level, if you're just feeling anxious and uncomfortable and all of a sudden not comfortable in your skin, I would think about where your progesterone is at, and I would think about GABA, and I would think about tools like L-theanine, glycine, even glutamine for some people to from the supplement cabinet. But as far as where your cycle's at, like I'll feel that and notice it and go rub on some progesterone cream like that, because that's just over years of playing with that, I kind of know. And it's insane how quickly your brain feels more calm when you have found the right tool for what you're feeling. When it comes to dopamine, if you've got this life that's full and you love it, and one day you're just like, "Shit, what did I do? I have so much to do. I have so many responsibilities. I don't have the energy for this." You might be low dopamine because so dopamine is the dopamine is the neurotransmitter that it makes you want to do hard things. And we think, unfortunately, oftentimes as dopamine as the reward for having completed a difficult thing, but it is not. Dopamine is created in the act of trying to accomplish that thing. And the thing with dopamine, when testosterone and estrogen go down, dopamine goes down. So if you are in a place where, you were fine with all your life and your responsibilities, and then there just comes like a week where this isn't happening, male or female, I'd think about what's happening to your testosterone and estrogen, because as those goes down, your dopamine goes down. And dopamine is your chemical of motivation. So if you're lacking motivation, think dopamine. If you are having brain fog, think acetylcholine, because acetylcholine is intimately connected to a lot of things, but estrogen. If your estrogen is going down, your production and utilization of acetylcholine, which is the neuromodulator of focus. So dopamine, motivation, go. Acetylcholine, sharp, focused, clear, let's go. Your GABA is just your calm. I think of a Cheshire cat in the sun. We feeling good, right? And then serotonin is that, you know, I kind of think of it as the connection chemical, even though that's more oxytocin. But it's the one most often thought of for depression, which I think does a disservice to the whole neurochemical hormonal system. And just as a for instance, up here, my man's sister is a nurse, and she and an ex Navy Ranger surgeon opened a direct primary care clinic. And in their clinic for many years, women of all ages would come in, and they didn't feel right. They felt sad, or they felt depressed, or they felt moody. So they did the normal thing. You check the hormones. They're checking estrogen, progesterone, the normal ones, right? Those would be normal. They would try different antidepressants, different medications, and the one thing they weren't checking was testosterone. And for some women, sometimes what they found is their testosterone was tanked. So their motivation was tanked. Their dopamine was tanked. So all of that to say it is a very individual thing, and there is a lot of nuance involved. And when for depression, if all we're looking for is serotonin, you may never feel better because your depression may have nothing to do with serotonin. And if you're hormonally imbalanced and you're not looking at testosterone, or you're not looking at, estriol, estrone, estradiol, and you're only looking at one, you might see no problem because you weren't looking for the right thing. So big tangent, but there are a lot of pieces, but we can start with understanding what feel is associated with which neurotransmitter and how those are affected by our current state of hormones. And it sounds overwhelming, but you can just start with the feels. Like,
Yeah.
I feel X. What neurotransmitter is associated with X? Okay, let me try some theanine. Did that help? Nope, made me more tired. Okay, so let's try this. And you know, again, it can be overwhelming, but I can't it is so empowering being in a place where you're not whipped around by your own neurochemistry because you've taken the time to understand it. It's worth it.
Yeah, that was really well worded, and the part with the women's hormones, like not measuring testosterone and such, I mean, we know, especially as women, we know there is such a great disservice to women in the health industry. And I think about teenagers when, okay, they've gotten their first period, there's things are going to be wonky and it takes a number of years. But then there's a time when things should be normal, and yet you bring them to their pediatrician, who most likely doesn't know a lot about hormones, and because they're not 18 yet or whatever the reason, and it's just like, well, this is normal. This is normal. And I have a client who she shared with me her daughter's situation, and this was very much the thing where she just had so many issues, and the doctor's like, she'll get better eventually, and it's I did have another doctor she got referred to, and sure enough, that one dug deeper into things like you were saying, not just the neurotransmitters, but progesterone level, testosterone, everything, and they found their cause.
Yep.
So it's,
It
yeah,
can
the testing part just drives me bonkers when it's just test this one thing and that's it, you're fine.
even with the practitioners trying to be more forward thinking, like I've never had a doctor. I had hippie parents. I've never had health insurance. I try things out, and I pay for my own blood tests, and I see what that did, and I see how I feel. But just like trying to help my man or other people who they go get these tests done at the doctor says X, they come back to me with the test and they say, oh, well, I feel like, but everything's fine. I have to write a list of the things that I was like, I need them to test these things next time you go. They're going to say no. They're going to say it costs more money. Tell them, I don't care. Thank you very much. I will pay. Let's get those results and then let's take a look again. And for me, it's kind of fun because I'm trying to get to the root of something so that the people that I love feel better. But for the person going through it, it's just like, what the hell? In my man's case, he's, worked for the military and the DoD for years and paid all this money in for quote unquote health and not getting any of that from it. And so it's incredibly frustrating, and people give up and they just accept, well, my doctor says I'm X, so I'm X. Now my diagnosis is now my ideology, and that's it. Like, hi, my name is, I have X. Instead of, no, this is a temporary state of dis-ease, and we are unfortunately not in a place where we can all have Peter Attia level care. And that is, I think, the most frustrating thing now is knowing someone like him exists and knowing Joe Rogan can go get whatever the hell he wants. And like, I couldn't even get stem cells from waste to well. I'm like, Joe, come on. Like, not cool.
Yeah.
So it's additionally frustrating because you know there are people out there who will do the deep dive and layer the genetics on top of the personal history, on top of the current state of your blood, and check the hormones, and then deep dive the pathways where maybe you're not processing the hormones right because you have all these MTHFR mutations and your choline pathway is a mess.
Yeah.
So it is, you basically, I don't, it's just frustrating. It really is. So again, the more the more you can personally just, take some tyrosine, get into a motivated place, and want to do some research to understand, just the better your life becomes. Because again, it's like for me, I got to a point in my life, especially like at 24, coming out of just I was fat, anorexic, then this, then that. I'm just like lost. The feeling really was like being whipped around by my own self. Like, no, life's going to do that to you. If I can figure out how to grab the reins and understand instead of spiral into feeling sad or anxious or whatever, then I have some measure of control, over my biology. Not in a super biohacky CRISPR sense, but in a let me understand so that I can take that understanding and go, all right, what do I need to do? Maybe I just need to go for a run. Maybe that's it, right? So I just I want to encourage people to want to have more of an understanding and try to get past the frustration that the person you're paying to do that for you can't yet do it because they can't most of the time. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. You might need 5 different sets of tests from 5 different people, and with that array, you might be able to figure out this little link, and it's exciting where we're headed, but it's frustrating. It's just it is frustrating. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So, jumping back to the neurotransmitters and the woman's cycle, I guess maybe two questions. Number one, briefly, we should have done this in the beginning, but
Right.
anyways, briefly describe what a neurotransmitter is for anybody that doesn't know. Maybe a very simple, like where it comes from, its main purpose, etc. And then also, like, how do those neurotransmitters like serotonin, GABA, dopamine, how do they interact with our cycle, with our female cycle? Like, are they going up and down with certain hormones? Are there, where are they throughout the cycle?
So I mean, very basically, neurotransmitters are they're neurotransmitters. They're chemical messengers. So think of a neuron, your brain cell. It has to talk to the rest of your entire body. So a neurotransmitter it's a chemical messenger. It is dictating what every cell in your body does in one way or another. Neurotransmitters just chemical messengers, right? So you don't want cells having trouble communicating, right? It doesn't feel good when we have trouble communicating. Our cell, in order, we're composed of, I think the latest estimate is it's like 30 trillion cells, right? So we are a colony of cells. The cells all have to talk to each other for us to be a coherent, healthy entity. So your neurotransmitters, it's their job to talk to one another. And I like to I think of them like little molecular geniuses or like a really smart construction crew when they're in order because they know what to do, they know where to go. And it is no wonder we do not feel correct when our neurotransmitters are off because you literally have cells that cannot communicate correctly with one another about what their jobs are, what they're supposed to do, and it doesn't feel good when they're off. It absolutely doesn't. And any number of things can throw them off, but as women we experience it, with our cycles all of the time. So we spoke briefly, throughout your cycle as estrogen goes up, we feel glowy, we I call it, like, you can kind of tell sometimes when a woman is fertile because A boss of mine once called it the mating dance. Like we don't even know we're doing it. We just feel better. We feel more comfortable in our skin. Like it doesn't matter. The clothes fit. We feel great. So estrogen is when it's in this higher place, all of our happy chemicals, our dopamine, our serotonin, our GABA, we're in a neurotransmitter state where these neurotransmitters are all kind of in this high optimal zone and we feel good. And we kind of all know what that feels like. And then as bleeding approaches and these things have to plummet in order for that to occur. So it's not just estrogen, progesterone go down, it's all of the neurochemistry associated with estrogen and progesterone and testosterone going down. So as we progress through our cycle, we are going to have different periods of time where acetylcholine and dopamine and serotonin and GABA are all high. We have good communication. We're feeling great. We're supposed to, go out there and make babies evolutionarily because we're at that point. And, this is a whole other conversation, but it's very interesting that all of those things go down when we're less fertile. And it's almost like we're kind of pulling back from evolutionarily being in the space for, the procreation to occur. And along with that, there's a whole other field called psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology. And our immune system tanks along with all of these things. So there's a reason why we don't want to be out in public right before our cycle. We don't feel good for a number of reasons, but our immune system is also lower. So, how you feel is 100% throughout your entire life intimately connected to what's happening with all of the hormones in your body. And toss cortisol into the mix, along with what's happening with your estrogen and your progesterone and your testosterone. That's a whole other piece of the puzzle that you have to try to figure out. So, as you go through your cycle, like obviously we need to go through that cycle. So unless you're, menopausal or perimenopausal, and unless you have blood tests that say otherwise, it's not like you want to just slap on some progesterone and estrogen cream when those go down, because now you're going to mess with your cycle. But if we know that we're going to have more anxiety around that period where progesterone goes down, we can use a non-hormonal tool like L-theanine, magnesium. Magnesium's also linked to estrogen. So as your estrogen goes down, your magnesium goes down. So, we're kind of we feel screwed for a minute. We're low in GABA, we're low in magnesium, we're low in estrogen. Like you're gonna not feel so hot. So it's more of, okay, if progesterone is going down and I know I feel a little more anxious or uncomfortable, like again, what tools can I use to diminish some of that are non-hormonal? With estrogen, the same thing, looking to tools that help with dopamine. It could be as simple as eat some dark chocolate during that time. Make yourself, I call it a happy drink. It's just dark chocolate with a capsule of L-theanine and some hot water and some
Yeah.
tasty creamer, so
Yeah.
there's tools all over the place, but that first piece is learning to acknowledge that the thing you're feeling very often is connected to where you're at in your cycle. And if you can just start there with knowing, like, fertile times, day 14, we're going to feel good. And you kind of know if your cycle's normal or semi normal, that now things are going to kind of go down. Just knowing that helps you be in a place where it's almost like saying, well, it's not me. Well, it is 100% you. But being able to say, there's a reason. There's a reason I feel this. My life isn't all of a sudden horrible. I don't all of a sudden hate my X, Y, or Z in my life. Now you have a place of knowledge to stand on to do something about it.
Yeah.
Again, whether it's the gym, an adult hot chocolate, or a supplement, you know where you're at. You can stop for a minute, not let that take over, and have some control over how your brain feels throughout your entire cycle, how your emotions feel throughout that entire cycle. And to me, it's about just, again, it sounds cliche, self-empowerment. It's not self-empowerment, it's just
No,
knowledge.
That's what I
not.
was gonna say. It's quite an empowerment when a woman is able to understand what is going on with her body and is very doable. I am an instructor for several types of natural family planning, so helping women learn how to track their cycles, whether to try to avoid or try to conceive. And I have learned 3 of them, but I'm an official instructor for 2 different versions. So anytime I've brought either couples through it because it's really helpful for the male to understand it as well, but particularly for the women, I would say 90 something percent of the time, there's always something it's just this big light bulb moment that explains it. Like, "Oh, I never knew that I don't always ovulate on day 14." That's the biggest one, where women just think automatically if I don't have an exact 28-day cycle, I'm unhealthy, I'm irregular. I'll ask them, "Are your cycles regular?" "No, they're usually like 30 days, 32." I'm like, "That's regular. That's
Yep.
that's normal."
Yep.
Like you just gotta figure out. And then sometimes they do have a 28-day cycle, but they're not ovulating till like day 19 or 20, which is also a problem and an imbalance. So all of these things, because you want your luteal phase post ovulation to be at least minimal 11 days, like 11 to 16 days is the healthy range. And that's showing healthy progesterone levels, which you were discussing. If you have a healthy ovulation, then you will have a healthy progesterone level through your luteal phase, which then ties into the GABA you were discussing, right?
Yeah, it's that knowledge begets understanding thing.
Mhm.
And it's really difficult, at least for me, if I don't have to like a thing, but if I understand it, there's not the emotion attached to it. There's no emotional spin out if I understand. It's like, okay, now I have this information. I don't like this information. Now what can I do to, alter it? Whatever it is. And to me, that's kind of what this entire like self-optimization biohacking space in the best light should be. It's like the ketogenic diet is a tool in the toolbox. The carnivore diet is a tool in the toolbox. Getting your genes tested isn't going to fix everything, but you might see some things that are going to help you understand what your liver is doing, which is then going to help you understand what your hormones are doing, which is then going to help you understand what your neurotransmitters are doing. And is it perfect? No, because that doesn't exist. But again, if you just need the littlest piece of self-knowledge to start with. Like for me, knowing my COMT status, like that tiny little piece of knowing what my brain did with dopamine was this jumping off point for then wanting to know what I genetically was doing with other things. So and you don't have to, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Choose one thing to understand about yourself, your life, your chemistry. Get intimate with that one thing because it's going to be connected to everything else you want to understand.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier to start with that one thing that's the biggest thing for you. Then the rest of it becomes exciting. But if you try to
Yeah.
just take it all at once, you're going to give up. It's too much. It's just too
Yeah,
much.
and not just learning from when you say learning, I know you know this and you intend on this, not just learning from influencers, but actually learning from
So
books, from science,
this
things like that.
is yeah, and this is what goes back to like even when I was just like first year in this health food store, especially people with money and no time. Tell me what to take. And they, I didn't make commission, but if I made commission, like they would fill their basket and I could just be a total dork and lie to them and they would leave with a bunch of stuff.
Right.
They left with a piece of paper. I told them what I understood about the thing they wanted to take, and I recommended they not buy it today. I recommend you go home and I want you to do a little research on these things on this piece of paper because I think it is so crucial to own some of that knowledge for yourself. And then apps like I I had the experience with Andrew Huberman, like, no one was ever talking about the that he was talking about when he first came out,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh my goodness, yay, someone's finally saying the things," because otherwise you're just in your corner by yourself doing this research and no one's talking about it, so maybe it's not right, you don't know. So it's not like turn off the world and go back into a library, but it is like when back to one of the things we were saying in the beginning, I don't feel good. Start with that. Start with before you do, don't go to the internet, don't go to the library, don't go to the books. Just start with, well, what do I mean? Like write down when I don't feel right or I don't feel good, break that down. Then go do that research for yourself, now it's online in books, wherever you're going to do it, to understand, you know, you could, I mean, really, you could even ask Grok, what,
I was just gonna say that.
you can say, what's the chemical basis of happy?
Mhm.
At least do that, because happy means nothing. That word is too, it doesn't have enough.
Objective.
Yeah. So, do that so you have a basis of knowledge to stand on. And also don't be afraid to be wrong. I can't I swore up and down for my entire life, because in the 90s, fat was bad, fat was bad, fat was bad. That was what I knew. Soy was good. Then I was introduced to the Weston A. Price Foundation. It's like, oh, I gotta start all over. I don't know anything. You're gonna learn, you're gonna unlearn, you're gonna learn again, more information is gonna come about. And I think we need to get more comfortable, just as humans on the planet right now, with understanding, like, science and research, when done right, is never done. There's no done. If someone says the science is done, I would stop listening to them, because that science is a living, actively evolving thing. And we need to be open. Like, I know some stuff, but I'm really clear on all the things that I don't know. But that doesn't mean that I can't take, I think this is the other thing. People are afraid to take a step if they don't understand the whole thing. Most people don't understand the whole thing. Even Peter Attia doesn't understand the whole thing. He understands a lot, infinitely more than I do. But that doesn't mean the knowledge that I have isn't sufficient to start making changes in my life. And so I think that that's important too. It's okay to start with one thing that you know is correct for you, that you've done a little bit of research on. Now go listen to maybe the Hubermans and the Atias and the other people in the world and see what they're saying about that. But keep
Yeah.
layering knowledge on top of that little piece that you own for yourself. Start there. Own something about your state of health and what's going to help you
I
to
love
start.
that. Yeah, no, that's 100%, and I've seen with health coaches, like beginner ones, they just finished their certification or whatever, and they still have stuff. I still had stuff to work on when I became a health coach, right? Like, I still have stuff now, but that doesn't mean that everything that I've learned so far and implemented was wrong,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm at in my journey right now. I've been low carb keto carnivore for 8 years now. And I have a drastic shift now where I have drastically upped my carbs because of where I am in my life. Our life is constantly evolving, it's constantly shifting. So our diet and our lifestyle shifts with it for different reasons. Male and female are very different. I see a lot of males like, I don't have any issues. It's like, because you're not a woman. Like, it's very different. So yeah, it's just that constant, like, owning that information, the science shifting thing. That's where I was going. Is I was very dogmatic in my keto carnivore days. We don't need fruit. We don't need any of that. If you can have it, great. I was one of those people. But then once I did bring up those, and when I say carbs, I mean the fruits, the vegetables. Like, for me, primarily fruits works better than vegetables. When I brought that up, the change I felt was just unbelievable. Maybe you might know something on this too.
Yeah.
For me, when I was in ketosis, meaning I was actually producing ketones, the brain was on fire. It was on point, focused, great, fantastic, no anxiety, chill, but the rest of my body was not.
Right.
My
Right.
thyroid was tanking, my A1C was going up, my blood sugar, my weight was going up, everything. So now that I've shifted, the things that were messed up in ketosis are getting better, but the brain part, there's like almost like a too much coffee jitter feeling. I'm not actually jittered, but it's like that my eyes dart around and it's hard to stay focused. So here I am trying to feel like, where do I find the balance? So maybe you can touch upon that with the neurotransmitter. Like, is there a neurotransmitter aspect to it? Or
There is. So ketones, separate from anything else, like, your brain loves ketones. There's just no way around that. It is a preferred fuel source. Your brain requires less oxygen when running on ketones. To me, the experience of getting into that ketogenic state, I, at the time, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I'd been paleo, kind of acaloric, trail running, wasn't trying to fix anything, but I listened to Dom D'Agostino on Rogan, and the science was just like, well, what is this? And when ketosis hit, it was insane because I wasn't trying to fix anything. The there was it's like there's another gear that you didn't know existed cognitively that you feel in ketosis. And I think all the balancing of all the neurotransmitters is involved, especially for anxiety or neurochemical imbalance. GABA is going to be in there having a calming effect. So the brain part of it and the way you described it, like for me, I jumped in before I understood a lot of things. So, I was drinking water all the time, constantly peeing, didn't understand, but I didn't care. My brain felt so good. I couldn't do a 14-mile trail run anymore. I could only do a 2-mile trail run until I fat adapted, but my brain felt so good. I didn't care. So there is a thing when you're especially in that 2.5 to 4 millimole, sometime higher in the beginning, that for me it was just like, why would I ever not want to be at 4, 5, 6 millimole, which there's a number of reasons why you don't want to be that high, but
Yeah.
it felt so good in the beginning that I kind of wanted that all of the time. And I think that there are many supplements that can tickle the neurotransmitter systems that are going to kind of mimic that ketogenic state. Nothing is going to directly mimic ketones. Like I'll still leverage exogenous ketones if I want to feel like a 3 to 4 millimole. But what I will say, and if you listen to any of the top experts, there's a sweet spot with the ketones. When the ketones are a little too high, there are some imbalances that occur within the body with your electrolytes, with your how acidic your body is fighting to not be. And I personally I like a 1 to 2, and I like knowing that my body can grab that, even if, like, I'm trying to learn how to make sourdough bread right now, so I'm gonna taste my sourdough bread, right? But for those of us who've gone through that fat adaptation, that secondary fuel substrate is always there. So if you don't eat for 12 hours or 8 hours and you're busy, you're gonna have some ketones on board. But as far as kind of optimal neurochemistry and the thing that you described is kind of like it can feel like anxiety. Think of it this way. So dopamine is high. If dopamine's high and acetylcholine is low, what you described is kind of what I'm thinking is happening. So you've got the go, but you can't get the go to come together because you can't focus the thoughts. Dopamine doesn't focus the thoughts. Ketones don't focus the thoughts. Ketones and being in the ketogenic state is going to give you a more balanced brain chemistry, but acetylcholine is the neuromodulator of focus as a mammal. And when we think of our neurotransmitters in general in the world, people talk about GABA, they talk about serotonin, they talk about dopamine. Unless you're Huberman or me, who's talking about acetylcholine? There's
Not many people.
four.
I think
Four.
it's Tia, the only other person.
Exactly. So we have 4 key neurotransmitters. And even when we talk about ADD and ADHD,
Yeah.
they're talking about dopamine. What is the neurotransmitter of focus for all mammals? Acetylcholine. So if you are in a place where you're like, okay, I've got the energy, but I can't get all the tasks to stand in a line so that I can go through the tasks, when my recollection and my brother's recollection of when we first got into ketosis, the feeling was there was very little time between thought and action because focus was almost immediate. It's like you woke up, you had a million things to do, no stress over it, you knew exactly what to start with,
Yeah.
you knew what came next, you just knock everything off. So that is kind of like the optimal state of focus. When it comes to having no ketones on board or lower ketones on board and wanting to be in that state, we want to optimize for acetylcholine, and we've got to have some dopamine on board because focus without it being motivated to do a thing, that's rough, right? Or I have a ton of stuff to do, but I'm just too cognitively tired, I just can't do it.
Mhm.
Or you just literally can't figure out how to forge through the day because you're in a state of brain fog, because again, maybe you're at a point in your cycle where your estrogen is low, which means your acetylcholine is low, and you literally, again, we go back, neurotransmitter, brain cells talking. We need to have enough of those neurotransmitters that can communicate with one another about what we need for a given task. And that gets us to again, ketones, they're going to have a balancing effect on all neurochemistry, in particular with anxiety and not so much depression. Ketones are optimizing brain energy. We didn't get to the mitochondria part yet, but
Yeah. I think we'll
these,
bring that up next.
yeah, it's just this piece is really crucial. So you're composed of 30 trillion cells. A skin cell has maybe 100 mitochondria. A heart cell has about 5,000. A single neuron, 2 million. 2 million mitochondria. So think of it this way. Your skin cells, they slough off a lot. They don't have a lot of jobs to do, right?
Right.
So now think about your liver, your heart, your kidney, your spleen, your brain. These are energy intensive organs that do a ton of work. So this is part of why organs and organ meats are good for us to eat. They are mitochondrially dense. The cells within organs are more mitochondrially dense, which means they're more energy intensive. If you don't have the energy for one reason or another, from your hormones, from your diet, from a disease state, to supply the necessary energy to the mitochondria for the organs that do the most work for you, you are not going to feel good. And sorry, I bring that in because ketones supply a secondary fuel source for your organ systems, for your brain that they love. So there's an energy piece to the neurotransmitter piece, and you do have to think of those. You do need to think of them together because the brain, again, neurons having millions of mitochondria versus even your heart that's got about 6,000 per each cell.
Yeah.
Where are those neurons going to get that energy from to create and use the neurotransmitters? So there's a whole conversation over here about the neurotransmitters, but then what if your brain and your brain's mitochondria and the cells in your brain, what if your neurons don't have enough energy to make or utilize the neurotransmitters? So it's the brain energy piece, and I, that just popped into mind because again, ketones are such an amazing secondary fuel substrate or primary fuel substrate depending on who you are, that your mitochondria love them too. And so
Mhm.
your organs are clearly going to love them because your organs have more mitochondria and your organs are doing more work for you every single second of every single day. So it's again back to I wish it was simpler, but just like I can give you an exogenous ketone ester, and for this period of time, you're going to feel, oh my God, you're going to feel amazing, but you didn't solve for an underlying neurotransmitter, hormonal, or energy issue. And the same with, if you're low estrogen, you can rub some cream on, but that's probably not getting to the underlying issue. And you might feel good for a minute. We need more data about you to make a big change. Sorry.
That makes a lot of sense. No, no, it's fine. And in the meantime, while I am on this journey, figuring out that right balance,
Yeah,
I did get some more exogenous ketones and I took some this morning in
they're a
preparation for
tool.
the
They're
yeah,
I They're a tool, and this is
yeah,
the thing I think we also have to think about, like, there's no bad tools. There's incorrect use of tools, or there's an
mhm,
incorrect understanding of what the tools are going to do, and I think exogenous ketones, back when this whole keto area first started, before we really started diving into metabolic health, there a huge disservice was done by companies who were telling you that we're going to get you into ketosis, just take these exogenous ketones and then check your blood. Well, you didn't fat adapt, you didn't turn on the machinery for utilizing ketones for it ruined it. They're an amazing tool. If I've got a long day, I will absolutely leverage some exogenous ketones. But
yeah.
it's not, I have the things I use daily because I know that on a daily basis they're perfect for me. But when I want an extra something or other, that stays in the cupboard. I've got tyrosine in the cupboard. Don't use it very often, but I know when I need it. It's there.
So how does with the mitochondria,
Yep.
if someone's mitochondria, I might be wording this extremely poorly, but if the mitochondria is not functioning properly to utilize the glucose and therefore prefers the ketones, is there a healing that needs to happen at the mitochondrial level to help the balance of all this, including the neurotransmitters, if that makes any sense?
For myself, for over 20 years, I've taken a handful of supplements way before even understanding keto as a thing that existed. eh, there many years ago, I first learned about CoQ10. CoQ10 is ubiquinol. Ubiquinol comes from the word ubiquitous. It's called ubiquinol because when we're healthy, CoQ10, which is ubiquinol or ubiquinone, is ubiquitous and in high amounts in all of our cells. But because evolution doesn't really care what happens to us after we procreate, that starts to go down around the age of 21. I was like 22 when I learned that. So I've been taking CoQ10, yeah, 25, long time now, but for a very long time. So I personally now view all aspects of health from the mitochondria and the status of the mitochondria. So there are supplements like CoQ10, PQQ, NMN, NAD. There's one that's really expensive that, unless you have a ton of money, is really hard. They're a great company, but they have the patent on it in Switzerland, and so no one else can offer it. I tried to make a product, but they'll lawyer up and destroy you. So I think it's MitoPure, so it helps with
Yeah.
mitophagy. There are people who they never want to supplement because why supplement and it's not natural. Well, it's also not natural to feel like you're 30 when you're 80. But guess what? We have tools. If you want to go with the natural aging process and you don't want to leverage any of the tools, whether those are dietary tools, whether that's going to CrossFit, putting on muscle, taking supplements, totally get it. You don't have to do it. But supplementally, I would consider a handful of supplements that are helping to ensure young, vital, healthy mitochondria, the ketogenic state, fasting sometimes, anytime you can get a little bit of fasting in there, that is quite good for the state of the mitochondria. That doesn't mean you have to do it all the time.
Right.
There's a lot of people now, they'll like on Sunday, they won't eat. All right. Whatever
Yeah.
it is. It doesn't have to be extreme. It can be go for a run while fasted. If you're already fat adapted, you're going to bump your ketones, you're going to feed your mitochondria. So there are activities that are going to help ensure our mitochondria can produce not just adequate energy, but be robust. I like to, again, think of they're doing so much for me. I want to do everything I can because if your mitochondria are functioning, chances are everything downstream, upstream, everything else is going to function better. But we tend to go, oh, there's something wrong with your liver, so let's do it. Let's do a liver scan. Let's do this. Let's do that. You might need to do all of that. But if you are metabolically unhealthy, and again, if your A1C is off and you're in the pre-diabetic place, the first thing you need to do is get that in order. And that's going to be diet, whatever that diet is for
Yeah.
you. But personally, I have, a stack of supplements that I highly recommend taking that have a direct effect on the mitochondria. MCT, the C8 MCT is a fuel that your mitochondria enjoy and that can help with mitochondrial function. Again, you don't have to be in ketosis all the time and you don't have to have raging ketones all the time, but I think of them as a tool that you want to have around and you want the ability to have it around. But I have a company, I have a product, and this product came out of my beginning in ketosis and my 20 years at the time, it's more now, in the supplement industry. I felt really good in the ketogenic state or out of the ketogenic state when I put, the MCT in my coffee and I put some alpha GPC in my coffee and I put some theanine in my coffee and I put some lion's mane in my coffee. They're all hitting aspects of that clarity, focus, and cognitive function in a different way. They are helping the mitochondria, but not as directly as a CoQ10 or a PQQ or some of these other things or endurance exercise. They're hitting all of the neurotransmitter pathways that we want balanced to feel focused and not like, Tweak from South Park. Like there's a bunch of nootropics that just kind of make you feel like Tweak, right? And then I can't tell you how many people we talk to who are afraid to try these nootropics because they tried one and they just felt horrible. There's nuance to it. We want to balance the neurotransmitters and we want to feel focused. And it is interesting. It's been a while. Like I've tried to compare what like a certain stack of nootropics feels like versus that high ketogenic state. And that high ketone state one is unless you're doing it for something very, very specific, you wouldn't have you wouldn't there wouldn't be a time where for 2 straight years an entity was at 3 millimole. right? No matter what, even back when we're running on the prairie and we haven't eaten for 7 days and we're trying to catch the elk, that might be 7 days, and then you're going to feast, and then you're going to have to go back into this fasting thing when you have to go out and you have to find the food again. So while there was a period where I just wanted to be at 3 millimole all the time, it's not ideal. I don't think it's ideal to be in that state all the time. It's a tool to leverage. Sometimes it's our biology isn't intended to be at that high level all the time. But I personally believe our brains can feel that good all the time. And we're just going through a different pathway. We're going through the pathway of ensuring that our neurotransmitters are optimized through food and supplementation, and we're going through that pathway also with, lifestyle. Like, we need to move, we need to hug dogs, we need to be around human, like, there it's the whole thing. And
Mm.
everyone's toolbox is going to be different. I love ice baths. I'm the strange woman who loves the 30-degree water, and they feel amazing, and I love it. I know what it does for me neurochemically. I love it. Not everyone does. So that's not a tool for everyone, but there's other tools, right? So very tangential way of it's not one or the other. And if you're missing that clarity that comes from that deep ketogenic state, there are other ways to achieve that that are more easier to leverage on an everyday basis without any negatives and without trying to rebalance. And I think that there are a lot of people like yourself who and me for different reasons, like I just why would I ever not be in deep ketosis? Right? It feels so
Yeah.
good. Like the science is amazing, that this is amazing. And sometimes it's as simple as like I've always wanted to try making sourdough bread. And I'm not it's not hurting me. And still
Yeah.
in like it's so whatever the reason is, there's a lot of people who are in this place of kind of being afraid to let go of that deep ketogenic state, who maybe they were or were not trying to fix a specific health issue, but now it's time to kind of be in that rebalancing place and
Mhm.
starting to notice the things that are different. There's in keto, there was no hormonal weight gain for me at all. Like, I didn't even know what holding on to water was anymore. And then you start adding back in carbs, you just have to remember, okay, we have glucose and ketones on board. When we have glucose on board, our cells, what is it? 3 molecules of water for every 1 molecule of glycogen that your
Yep.
body's trying to store. So with all of these changes, just and you're doing it, like you acknowledge, like, okay, there's this thing that's missing, but exogenous ketones have that effect, so you can kind of leverage
Yep.
that tool. And again, it's all about having tools. And with our Keto Brains nootropic that we ended up creating, it to me, I left a lot of things out of it because I wanted everyone to feel good on it. I didn't want
Mhm.
it to have to be go to our site. If you're high dopamine, use this one. If you're high this, use this one. I wanted it to be a tool that 99% of the people who used it would feel better, could use on a daily basis, and would be hitting upon multiple aspects of what, quality cognitive function was. And to simplify, I mean, honestly, it's back to our whole conversation. How do you simplify a word called nootropics and neurotransmitters for someone who's never even stopped to consider it? And that's, part of where, our little company came from, was trying to simplify all of this.
Yeah, I love it. It's definitely something I bring with me when I'm traveling for sure. When there's gonna be jet lag, things like that. It's a staple go-to, and I love that you guys have little travel packets too, where I don't have to throw them in Ziploc bags.
Egg, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so you can bring it, to the coffee shop, but so in your well, one quick thing also, some people might say, because you touched upon it a little bit, well, like, why not be in ketosis long term? Ancestrally, you were kind of talking about that. They would, maybe fast for a bit because they're looking for the elk and they'd get it. The other aspect is ketosis does act as a stressor. It doesn't mean it's a bad stress per se, just like working out is a hormetic stressor, exercise, building muscle. This one is, but the exercise, you're not doing it 24/7. It's a temporary and then things balance out. With ketosis, a lot of times it's this like constant one. And for me, when I did a cortisol test, I even did a second one just to make sure because I was floored. at being, I can't remember if it was stage 2 or stage 3 adrenal fatigue. Like I had a tiny little bump in the morning and then a little at night, but everything was super low.
Yep.
So that's why for me, I had to pause for a bit was because I needed to reduce the stressors that I can control, but yet looking for other opportunities to still have that good brain feeling that I had on while in ketosis. So that's where not only the exogenous ketones come in play, but Keto Brains
Yep.
nootropic that I love. I'll put it in my yogurt. I'm not a big coffee person, so I've had to get creative, but it's winter now, so it'll
Yep.
be a lot easier with the hot drinks.
Yes.
Some like prime protein. That was my key. Is like do a little warm drink with chocolate prime protein and Keto Brains, and it was delicious. But you want to name, I don't know if you talked about dopamine and everything throughout the time, but maybe name the other aspects of Keto Brains that you have in there to help with that balance.
Yeah. So first of all, the base is the C8 MCT. So creamy, delicious. It's going to stimulate your own liver's production of ketone bodies, really irrespective of whether or not you're in ketosis. If you're on an empty stomach, they might not be measurable, but your liver knows what to do with that C8. So you're going to get that little bump of ketones. But the star ingredients are the nootropics. So we have something called alpha GPC. Alpha GPC is alpha glycerylphosphocholine. So this is the form of choline that does the best job of stimulating the brain's production of acetylcholine. So you can't supplement with acetylcholine. I mean, you could eat brains, but that's not very common.
Oh, thank
But
you.
so we've got a full 300 milligrams of alpha GPC. So we are directly increasing acetylcholine, which, as we discussed, is the neuromodulator, the neurotransmitter of focus in mammals. So if any of what you're feeling has to do with not being focused and you're trying various supplements that don't have an acetylcholine precursor, yeah, they may do something, but you really want to be looking for that bump in acetylcholine. And if you're looking for alpha GPC, you're going to want a minimum of 300 milligrams. That's where the studies begin on showing the benefit for cognitive function. There's a bunch of other benefits that come as you take more acetylcholine that have to do with growth hormone and ability to produce force in the gym. So you get a bunch of benefits from it. Then there's 250 milligrams of L-theanine. Primarily think of L-theanine. L-theanine is an amino acid-like molecule that crosses the blood-brain barrier to bump your brain's own production of GABA. It also helps put you in an alpha brainwave state. So a beta brainwave state, if you were in an EKG machine, is kind of anxious and uncomfortable looking and feeling. And an alpha brainwave state is it's a calm and focused state. So think, if you're a golfer, if you're a runner, whatever you do when you get into that flow state, along with that is being in that alpha brainwave state. Theanine also does help with serotonin and dopamine in a softer, non-dramatic way. Like there are things that will directly bump dopamine in a way that's very noticeable. With the theanine, it's kind of a secondary, lesser effect. And then lion's mane. So with the lion's mane, I don't feel lion's mane. Many people don't. Some people do. But with the lion's mane, we are bumping production of BDNF and NGF, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor and nerve growth factor. And these are proteins that help heal neurons, heal brain cells. So that combination of three things, we're looking at. I'd like you to feel something acutely. I'd like you to acutely feel better and more focused, but also balanced and healthy over time when it comes to cognitive function. And it can be used daily. I use it at least 3 times a day. It can be used as a pre-workout. You can leverage more on days that are longer. I have not been without it since we created it close to 5 years ago. But we drove from Montana to New Orleans for a show. And on the way back, day two was like a 15-hour drive. And we got up early in the hotel. We got in the car, 6 hours in. My brother and I are just like, damn, everything's hitting. Like that was a long drive. That was a long show. And then we both were like, dude, we didn't have any keto brains today. And it was really neat because it's been so long since I haven't had that on board, like to feel intimately how helpful that combination was, especially on a sleep deprived, brain that had been driving. So we stopped at a gas station, got gross gas station coffee because that's all there was, and just put 2 fat scoops of Keto Brains in there. And it was like, "Oh yeah, I remember now." Like, I remember how potent this felt when I first put that combination together. So it just the point of that, use it daily, but if you're on a road trip or you're jet lagged or you're in a situation where like you have to drive. You're not going to go to the gym to fix things. You're not going anywhere to do anything else. It's a
Yeah.
great tool to have around when you need focus and clarity on demand and your options are limited.
Yeah, and I can speak to that myself. I mean, that's why I've stayed affiliated with you guys, and I've had my ons and offs with it where it's like it's a stressful time of life and I'm taking it and it's like a daily routine and then, like most supplements and different things, I fell off for whatever reason, but then you start noticing it and I
Yeah.
messaged you and I was like, I need my keto brains. Like I
Mhm.
need to get more. It's the Christmas season. This is like the ideal time of stress and I will speak to the calming effect of it for me is I have had high resting heart rate for a long time and just it like during the day, it's even if I'm sitting here, it just tends to be on the higher end. Now, bringing carbs in has helped that. But if I have the keto brains, I see this sudden drop in my heart rate. And it's not like a dangerous like I'm going to pass out, but it's where it should be.
I think it's really balancing, and each of those nootropics, like I speak repetitively about the most common things that they do, but they do a lot of things. And as we talked about, like, you know, you're not just increasing GABA. So what's downstream of GABA? We have a calmer nervous system, and downstream of a calmer nervous system is maybe a heart rate that is more, in alignment with being healthy and yeah, it's I love that, and I love hearing the different ways that it helps people and the different ways that they leverage it, and we have people who take it and reach out and are like, "Is this safe? Is this a drug? Why do I feel so good?" And that to me just says their choline status was really, really bad, right? And then we have people who take a full bag and they're like, "It tasted good, I enjoyed it, but I didn't feel anything." And then a week later, they're like, "Oh, I realize how much this was helping me," but they didn't it was more subtle for them. So until they were out of it for a week, they didn't realize what a great month they had when they were on it. So
Yeah.
it runs the gamut. It depends on a lot of things, but
Yeah.
we really don't have life without a brain. This is something I didn't say, but I feel it and I believe it. Like your neurotransmitter state, your neurotransmitters are the lens through which you feel and experience everything in life. So, you talk about rose-colored glasses or these glasses or that. The current state of your neurotransmitters is how you are ingesting life. If that's off, nothing in life is going to feel correct. And we've all had that experience, the getting out of bed, getting out on the wrong side of bed thing, right? You didn't just get out of the wrong side of the bed. Your neurochemistry is off, so you can't see life for what it is. And so if we want to live lives that feel good, we need to pay attention to that neurotransmitter lens that we're experiencing life through.
Love that. I think that's a great like closing snippet there to leave people thinking and pondering about that. Do I wake up on the wrong side of the bed pretty often? Do I need to pay attention to those neurotransmitters, all those kind of things, and help to balance that? Molly, this has been awesome. Thank you
My
so much for coming
pleasure.
on and sharing
Hi.
your incredible knowledge and research that you constantly do about this topic. I think it's a much needed one for a lot of people to talk about because there is a lot of that talk of the feelings and I'm a one of the things we didn't get to talk about, but maybe another time, like the food addiction aspect, like those kind of things, those all hint at neurotransmitter
Yep.
imbalances.
Yep.
And if you can calm the nervous system, balance those neurotransmitters, then that addiction aspect, I'm not going to say is cured, but can definitely be handled a lot better. I
In front of that initial, it's like if you can go, "Oh, okay," like, and not immediately go to the behavior that you think is gonna quell the feeling, that's the start, and I don't care what it is. It could be anxiety, it could be the self-hating thoughts, the whatever it is, getting in front of it is huge because
yeah.
then you can take an action.
Exactly. I personally am gonna do a little experiment with my little guy. He has autism and ADHD, and I'm gonna start giving it to him every day as well and see
We
What?
have, we can't legally say the things, but we have a number of moms with all ages, ADHD, autism, and ADD who have chosen to leverage it, and they they get good results with it. It's one of those you wish you could say more, but when you look again at the neurochemical pathways involved, it makes a lot of sense that it would help.
Yep, he likes his coffee, and I know when he has, like, a little bit of caffeine in the morning, it makes a big difference for him, so very easily could throw that in there, and we do,
Yeah,
like, a half cup, just in
yeah,
case
yeah.
people are like, "Caffeinating your kid."
Again, it's a tool, and it might be the right
Yes,
tool for some teenagers and kids.
I
I
think
just
it's better than the pharmaceuticals right now. So,
that's
yes.
that's another whole conversation. How quick and comfortable people are with the pharmaceutical route, and how scary even just like trying keto might be for.
Yeah.
Yep, we're in fun times. That's
Well, thank you so much. If anybody wants to find you, if there's anything they wanna talk to you about, if they want you to hand them a piece of paper of information or science, where can they reach out to you?
I don't have a personal anything, but our entire company is just my brother and I, and he does not do social media anymore. So if you reach out on Instagram or our website, you will get me. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have. And, feel free to toss whatever questions my way. If I can answer them, or most likely, typically I'll send you in the direction of something to take a deeper dive on your specific question. I'm happy to help.
Awesome, and I will have the link to her Instagram down below. Also, I do affiliate with Keto Brains, so if you wanna try them out at a discount, I will have the link below as well. And yeah, again,
Thank
thank you
you
so much
for
coming on,
helping
and
me.
if if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and comment, subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. Have a good one.
Thank you.